Malaysia and Singapore committed to strengthen ASEAN ties. No immediate plan to rationalise RON 95. Good evening and Salam Malaysia Madani. You're watching Malaysia Tonight. I'm SAHIH. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim today met with the Singapore counterpart Lawrence Wong to discuss ways to further strengthen bilateral relations, particularly among ASEAN as Malaysia assumed chairmanship for the regional summit next year. Wong arrived in Malaysia yesterday for a two-day working visit at the invitation of Datuk Seri Anwar. This is inaugural visit to Malaysia after being sworn in as the Prime Minister on 15 May.
We did touch on some of the need to work together in the ASEAN framework because to Malaysia and Singapore, ASEAN is extremely important and strategic, and both of us seem to be committed to make sure that ASEAN continue to function more effectively and to focus on the new challenges of energy, digital, trade and joint investments.
At a joint press conference, Wong also underscored Singapore's shared commitment to bolstering long-standing relations amidst Malaysia's chairmanship of the regional summit to be held next year.
Next year, Malaysia will assume the chairmanship of ASEAN. Singapore is confident that under Malaysia and PM Anwar's leadership, ASEAN will develop further as a stronger and more integrated community and will deepen our relations with our external dialogue partners.
In 2023, Malaysia and Singapore were each other's second largest global trading partners. Singapore was also Malaysia's largest trading partner among ASEAN countries, with total trade valued at 363.13 billion ringgit, $79.60 billion US dollars. On a more domestic front, Malaysia and Singapore are committed to resolving outstanding bilateral issues such as airspace, water and maritime borders, and to take the bilateral relationship to even greater heights through new cooperation. Both Prime Ministers affirmed this during the joint press conference in Putrajaya today.
Both our countries. Of course, we did discuss all the issues, some outstanding, some ongoing, very well. The economic zone, the financial zone, the increased trade, phenomenal, and investments into Malaysia. But also, we did touch on the broad parameters to discuss issues of water, FIR, maritime borders, which I think can and should be resolved in the interest of the future relations and strengthening the bond of friendship between the two countries.
Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim said the issue now was to ensure that all the details and the nitty-gritty were resolved. He added that the faster the issues were resolved, the better it was for the two countries. Lawrence Wong, who is on his first overseas trip since sworn in as Prime Minister in May, said his priority during the visit to Kuala Lumpur is to build a good relationship with Datuk Seri Anwar, building on the strong ties that Senior Minister Lee Hsien Loong had established with Malaysia's leaders. The Domestic Trade and Cost of Living Ministry, or KPDN, is studying the basis of applications and appeals from various parties regarding improvements to the Subsidised Diesel Control System, or SKDS. Minister Dato' Armizan Muhammad Ali said that following the implementation of targeted diesel subsidies, certain parties have directly submitted applications to KPDN to consider adding several types of goods vehicles to the list of eligible for diesel subsidies under SKDS 2.0. He said other suggestions submitted include increasing the existing basic quota under SKDS 1.0 for types of public transportation vehicles such as school and express buses. Elaborating further through a statement release, the minister said KPDN is reviewing all of this and it will be promptly submitted for consideration to the Diesel Subsidy Approval Committee, which includes KPDN, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Transport, Road Transport Department, Land Public Transport Agency and Royal Malaysian Customs Department. He stated that the appeal committee under the Diesel Subsidy Approval Committee will subsequently submit recommendations for all the appeals for consideration and decision by the Cabinet. The government announced that the retail price of diesel in Peninsular Malaysia has been set at RM3.35 per litre, effective 10 June under the targeted subsidy system. SKDS is a specific platform for selected public and goods vehicles to continue receiving diesel subsidies through the fleet card. The federal government today responded to calls by some factions to review relations with the Johor state government, asserting that any demand made by state governments cannot supersede the constitution. Speaking on behalf of the federal government, Communications Minister Fahmi Fadil reiterated that Malaysia was founded on the spirit of federalism that was agreed upon by all states, including Johor.
Oleh itu, Perlembagaan Persekutuan menjadi asas dalam menjamin hak negeri dan dalam menentukan hubungan di antara kerajaan persekutuan dan kerajaan-kerajaan negeri. Berkait perkara-perkara mengenai Sabah dan Sarawak, perbincangan-perbincangan ini adalah berpandukan peruntukan dalam Perlembagaan Persekutuan dan Perjanjian Malaysia 1963.
Fahmi, who is also the Madani government spokesperson, said this at the weekly post-cabinet press conference in Putrajaya today. He was responding to concerns over several leaders in Johor perceived to be unfair relations between the state and Putrajaya. On Tuesday, Johor Menteri Besar Dato' Onn Hafiz Ghazi issued a public statement calling for 30% of the state's tax collection to be retained by the state. Still ahead in our business segment, shift to targeted subsidies, a move in the right direction. The government will first focus on the implementation of the targeted diesel subsidy before looking into the RON95 petrol subsidy. Without committing to a specific timeline, Finance Minister 2, Datuk Sri Amir Hamzah Azizan said Putrajaya planned to first see through the rollout of the targeted diesel subsidy.
Biarlah diesel subsidi ni habis dulu. Kita baru memula dengan diesel subsidi ni. Yang penting kalau kita ingatkan masa kita nak buat diesel subsidi, kita kena memikir implikasinya, kita memikir cara yang nak buatnya. Ya, sebab masa sekarang fokus kerajaan adalah untuk subsidi diesel.
He was met by reporters on the sidelines of the 2024 Sasana Symposium at Sasana Kijang in Kuala Lumpur today. He was commenting on Maybank Investment Bank's indication that the price of RON95 petrol needed to be increased by 32 cents per litre or 15.6% starting from 1st July. The move was for the government to achieve 4.1 billion ringgit in savings to reach the target of reducing subsidies expenditure by 11.5 billion ringgit in the 2024 budget. The ceiling price for RON95 is currently maintained at RM2.05 per litre. On another note, Datuk Sri Amir Hamzah said the Malaysian economy is projected to grow between 4 and 5% in 2024, supported by export recovery and resilient domestic demand. He said trade recovery will be underpinned by the global technology upcycle and further recovery in tourism activity. He also said that the implementation of catalytic initiatives under various master plans such as the National Energy Transition Roadmap, NETR, New Industrial Master Plan 2030, NIMP 2030 and the 12th Malaysia Plan would further boost investment. Hence, the minister said the government is committed to delivering a meaningful structural reform because this is necessary to build a more prosperous and inclusive Malaysia. In this regard, he noted that the parallel multi-pronged strategic reforms are being pursued to support this endeavour. He also said that the Public Finance and Fiscal Responsibility Act (FRA) and the Medium Term Fiscal Framework (MTFF) are crucial measures to broaden and diversify the revenue base. Besides that, he said that Malaysia is well positioned to benefit from the reconfiguration of global value chains. Hans Datuk Sri Amir Hamzah said by advancing these structural reforms, Malaysia will enhance its global competitiveness relative to other nations that are also rapidly working to bolster their growth potential, address fiscal deficits and improve resource efficiencies. The shift from blanket subsidies, including for diesel, towards support that is better targeted to those in need should be welcomed as a positive step towards more equitable, sustainable policies while building fiscal policy space. Bank Negara Malaysia BNM Governor Dato' Abdul Rashid Ghaffur said the current period of relative macroeconomic stability provides the country with a unique window of opportunity to pursue meaningful reforms and build a brighter future. The Governor said the case for reform is very clear. He said since the economic environment is constantly changing, bearing risks and weaknesses, national policies must evolve to match.
Reforms from fiscal responsibility to improve social safety nets and enhance climate resilience are crucial to our country's sustainable growth and to the welfare of the rakyat.
He said this in his welcoming address at the Sasana Symposium 2024 in Kuala Lumpur today. Commenting on the Sasana Symposium, he said it is more than just keynotes and in-depth technical discussions. The symposium, he said, is also about demonstrating how reforms and policy are more than just abstract concepts and ideas, and about how reforms can make a positive impact in the lives of Malaysians. The Employees Provident Fund (EPF) recorded a total distributable income of 19.20 billion ringgit for the first quarter ended 31st March this year, marking a 33.1% increase from 14.42 billion ringgit in the same quarter of 2023. This distributable income excludes market-to-market gains from unrealized securities. Commenting further through a statement released, EPF Chief Executive Officer Ahmad Zulkarnain said that while first quarter results have been strong, financial markets remain subject to several risks. The FBM KLCI index increased by 10% year to date, reflecting confidence in the growth and impact of various new economic and industry policies. During the reviewed quarter, the EPF reported that income from Ikuti rose to 13.15 billion ringgit compared to 8.69 billion ringgit in first quarter 2023. This asset class remained the top income contributor, accounting for 68% of total distributable income. The increase in income is attributed to fund managers' proactive strategy of realizing capital gains during the market rally, capitalizing on favorable conditions before the anticipated uncertain environment in the coming quarters. As of March 2024, the EPF's overall investment assets grew to 1.19 trillion ringgit, with overseas investment accounting for 38% of the total assets, while domestic investment account for 62% of total assets, primarily invested in fixed income instruments, providing long-term income stability through interest and profits. Petronas Lubricants International is collaborating with UK-based Isotope Technologies Limited to jointly develop thermal management solutions for data centers, edge computing facilities and blockchain operations to enhance efficiency whilst reducing carbon emissions and water usage. Petronas Lubricants International is the global lubricants manufacturing and marketing arm of Petronas, Malaysia's global energy group, while Isotope is a global leader in precision liquid cooling solutions. In a statement today, it said that leveraging both expertise and experience in thermal management, the partnership will drive research and development as well as innovation to deliver new liquid cooling technologies tailored to meet the sector's emerging needs in line with the ongoing advancement of the global digital infrastructure. Petronas Lubricants International Managing Director and Group Chief Executive Officer Hazlin Idris said Petronas Lubricants International and Isotope share a common ground in liquid cooling technologies expertise. Building upon the partnership with Isotope, Petronas Lubricants International introduces Petronas Iona Terra, a liquid coolant specifically designed for data centers, which increasingly rely on liquid cooling to maintain optimal temperatures. Kerana Investment Bank Research maintains a positive outlook for the healthcare sector despite its subdued performance in the first quarter of 2024. During this period, the sector has demonstrated stable sequential earnings delivery, meeting expectations for half of the covered companies. Notably, only Pharmaniaga Berhad exceeded the research unit's forecast, while IHH Healthcare Berhad and KPJ Healthcare Berhad performed in line with expectations. Conversely, companies like Nova Wellness Group and Kotra Industries Berhad fell below projections. The research notes that private healthcare players such as KPJ and IHH face a seasonally low quarter in first quarter 2024 due to festive holidays. However, these companies expect a return of patients in the following quarters, as indicated by patient numbers from April onwards. KPJ's performance in first quarter 2024 met expectations despite the slower festive period, with factors like higher inpatient throughput, bed capacity, revenue per patient, and surgeries positively impacting results. The research anticipates a 9% growth in patient throughput for KPJ, driven by a recovery in demand for elective surgeries and revenue intensity, notwithstanding a lower bed occupancy rate. Domestic tourism expenditure in the first quarter of 2024 or 1Q 2024 soared 25.3% year-on-year to 24.1 billion ringgit. The Department of Statistics Malaysia (DOSM) said the number of domestic visitors in Malaysia experienced a significant surge to record 58.6 million visitors in the period, up 19.0% as compared to the same quarter last year. Meanwhile, Chief Statistician Datuk Seri Dr. Muhammad Uzair Mahidin said the domestic tourism performance in Malaysia saw a sharp upturn in 2023 with a total spending of 84.9 billion ringgit compared to 64.1 billion ringgit in 2022. The significant hike in expenditure was attributed to the astounding increase of 34.4% in the number of tourists and 29.7% in excursionists, where tourist spending contribution accounted for the majority at 61.5%. Domestic visitors surged 24.6% to 213.7 million ringgit compared to 171.6 million ringgit recorded in 2022. Visiting relatives and friends remain the primary purpose of domestic tourism, accounting for 33.6%, but it has yet to surpass the pre-pandemic percentage of 42.3%, while shopping remained the second most significant purpose, contributing 32.6%. On another note, Datuk Seri Dr. Muhammad Uzair said Selangor was the most visited state in 2023, attracting 27.6 million domestic visitors, followed by the Federal Territory of Kuala Lumpur and Sarawak with 22.2 million and 17.9 million domestic visitors respectively. A combination of robust Malaysian macroeconomic data and weakness in key US indicators has drawn investors to redirect their funds into the Malaysian debt market in May. In a research note today, Kerana Investment Bank, Kerana IB said total foreign debt holding rose to 271.9 billion ringgit in May, compared with 266.4 billion ringgit in April, with its share of total outstanding debt increasing to 13.2% versus 13.0% in April, a 5-month high. Notably, it said that on 7th and 8th May, investors net bought 2.3 billion ringgit in bonds following the release of weak US jobs report and ISM services figures. The note also said that besides that, on 17th May, lower than expected US inflation figures and weak retail sales led to single-day inflows of 900 million ringgit. Also contributing to these inflows was strong domestic industrial production index (IPI) data, alongside warning US consumer sentiment. Kerana IB added that the substantial inflows in May were driven by funds following into Malaysian Government Securities MGS, Government Investment Issues GII, and Malaysian Islamic Treasury Bills MITB. The Malaysian corporate sector holds $190 billion in foreign currency liquid assets located abroad, which is indicative of the country's robust international investment position. Bank Negara Malaysia BNM Deputy Governor Dato' Marzu Hisham Omar said the corporate sector is comprised of financial institutions, government-linked investment companies and government-linked companies that have investments abroad and generate income from their foreign investments. He said the central bank is not asking the sector to liquidate their assets but encourage them to bring back the realised profits and convert them into ringgit. Focusing on the international reserves of BNM, the Deputy Governor added that the country's reserves remain resilient due to the level of external debt to the gross domestic product being manageable. Meanwhile, ASEAN Plus 3 Macroeconomic Research Office AMRO Group Head and Principal Economist Dr. Runcana Ponsapan said ASEAN economies are well prepared financially, particularly in terms of international reserves. The Kuala Lumpur rubber market closed lower today in tandem with the negative performance of regional rubber futures markets. Nevertheless, further losses were limited by gains in benchmark crude oil prices and positive global economic outlook from the World Bank amid Thai natural rubber supply. A dealer said that Japanese rubber futures declined today, weighed down by a slew of soft economic data from top consumer China, although the losses were cushioned by higher oil prices and a weaker yen. The dealer noted that oil prices rose today following upbeat global demand views from the United States U.S. Energy Information Administration EIA and the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries OPEC. The Malaysian rubber bonds MRB price for standard Malaysian rubber 20 SMR20 fell by 2.5 cent to 840.5 cent per kilogram, while latex in bulk declined by a cent to 795.5 cent per kilogram. At 5 p.m., the MRB reference price for physical SMR20 stood at 844 cent per kilogram, while latex in bulk was at 797.5 cent per kilogram. The European Commission will notify car makers today that it will provisionally apply additional duties of up to 25% on imported Chinese electric vehicles from next month. The Financial Times, which were reported citing people familiar with the matter, also stated that the EU is expected to disclose the tariff due to what it says are excessive subsidies. The EU and China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs did not immediately respond to Reuters' request for comment. Less than a month after Washington quadrupled duties for Chinese EVs to 100%, Brussels is expected to set almost certainly far lower tariff for imports from Chinese makers such as BYD and Geely, as well as Western producers such as Tesla that export cars from China to Europe. BYD, Geely, SAHIH and Tesla also did not immediately respond to Reuters' queries on the report. The move comes as European automakers are being challenged by an influx of lower-cost EVs from Chinese rivals. China, meanwhile, has rebuked the EU over the anti-subsidy investigation, urged cooperation and lobbied individual EU countries, but not fully spelled out what its response to tariffs would be. Mexican President-elect Claudia Sheinbaum said that investors had nothing to fear from proposed judicial reforms that have rattled confidence in Latin America's second-largest economy. She assured that investment are safe in Mexico within the framework and the country's law. Mexico's stock market and currency fell sharply last week on fears that a sizable majority in Congress would enable Sheinbaum's left-wing ruling party to push through constitutional changes potentially damaging to the business and economy. One of the proposed reforms, which required the approval of two-thirds of Congress, is for judges to be chosen by popular vote. Sheinbaum, who has pledged a broad consultation on the proposals, noted that due to many honourable exceptions, people have a perception of corruption in the judiciary. The former Mexico City mayor, who won nearly 60% of votes, will replace her close ally and mentor Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador as president on 1st October. Sheinbaum said that she would maintain her focus on the root causes of migration, one of the key issues in relations with the neighboring United States. Oil prices rose today due to a strong demand outlook in the US, the world's largest oil consumer, and ongoing uncertainties regarding the timing of the US Federal Reserve interest rate cut. International benchmark Brent crude traded at $82.39 per barrel, an increase of 0.6% from the closing price in the previous trading session. The American benchmark West Texas Intermediate WTI traded at $78.50 per barrel at the same time, a 0.8% rise from the previous session. Data released by the American Petroleum Institute (API) late yesterday showed a decrease of 2.42 million barrels in US crude oil reserves against the market expectation of a draw of 1.75 million barrels. The large drop in commercial crude inventories indicates growing demand in support of the upward price trajectory. The U.S. Energy Information Administration (EIA) will release official inventory data later in the day. Meanwhile, mixed signals from macroeconomic data released in the U.S. raise uncertainties as to when the Fed will start cutting interest rates. Low interest rate reduce the value of the US dollar relative to the other currencies, but they also lower the price of oil, which generates stronger demand and supports further price rises. Coming up in our foreign segment, North Korea's Kim hails Russia ties ahead of likely Putin visit. The Thai Constitutional Court today began deliberating on a case to disband the opposition Move Forward Party for violating the constitution by seeking to amend the Royal Insult Law. The court said it would continue the hearing next Tuesday on 18 June in the case brought by the country's election commission. The dissolution case is part of a trio of politically charged cases being heard by the court, including one that could potentially lead to the Prime Minister's dismissal. Move Forward won massive youth support with its lively progressive agenda that was amplified by a sophisticated social media campaign, brushing aside military-backed parties in the 2023 polls and securing 30% of the seats in the lower house. If it is found in breach of the constitution, the party could be dissolved and its executives banned from politics for a decade. The law, which protects the monarchy from insult and defamation, carries a punishment of up to 15 years jail for each perceived offence. According to a legal aid group, it has been applied to prosecute over 270 people since the year 2020. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un today hailed his country's ties with Russia, saying the two nations were invincible comrades in arms. Amid reports, President Vladimir Putin will visit Pyongyang imminently. Kim made a rare overseas trip to meet Putin in Russia's Far East last year, with Seoul and Washington subsequently claiming Pyongyang was shipping weapons to Moscow for use in Ukraine, violating UN sanctions in return for technical help with its satellite program. Putin was expected to pay a return visit to North Korea in the coming days after the Kremlin told Russian media in May that the trip was being prepared. That concludes this evening's Malaysia Tonight. In our top story, Malaysia and Singapore committed to strengthen ASEAN ties. Do tune in to World Today tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. on TV2. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. I'm SAHIH. Thanks for watching.